Okay. Some people were requesting that I explain the continental breakup, and since I haven't since I haven't done that lately, or I haven't done it in a while, I figure I might as well just go ahead and show some of the evidence for the breakup of the continents here. So let me just go ahead and start with this one here. Yes. Oops. Okay. Here's one map showing the connections, keeping in mind that the sediment layers line up too. Not only do the fossils line up between South America, Africa, and India, Antarctica, and Australia, these are plant fossils here. The sediments line up too. And of course, if that's the case, then the breakup had to have been after the sediments were deposited by the global flood. I mean, it's just common sense progression, you know. It's really not. It's not too complicated, right? So, but in in creation circles, I rarely hear anybody talking about that the the breakup happened 100 years after the global flood. In the days of Peleg, the earth was divided according to what the Bible says. And ever since I was a child, that that was presented to us. You know, that was one of the ideas of the global flood, or creation in the global flood, and the aftermath. So I never did forget it as a possibility. So then when I run across this information, I'm running across all this information here. Oops, hold on. Um, you know, it supports and in fact disproves that the breakup happened during the global flood, because you can't have fossil deposition and sediment layers connecting these continents until, or unless you know it broke up after the global flood, after the fossils were deposited, after the sediments were deposited, and after the glacial striations, which is the other thing. So here's another picture of the same thing, give you a good idea of the kinds of fossils and plant fossils that are connecting Australia, Antarctica, India, Africa, and South America in sediment layers. Let me see, somehow I'm losing something here. Oh, I'm not even on what am I, not on the right one? Hello, Jerome. Breakup after 100 years is very logical. Blessings. Good morning, by the way. God bless. Likewise. So then, if I can find the other one, I don't know. I'll try this one. Well, where's this going? What did it hijack my? Oh, here's a picture of the glacial evidence, right? Glacier evidence, and if I can ever find the other one, well, you have glacial markings going from basically from south to north. This looks like a center here, and in India, Australia, showing that they were all once connected. Now, let me see if I can find a better picture. This is a little bit, I don't know how this is going like this, but anyway. If I missed it, somebody's hijacking my, what do I call it here? Hey, Alex. This is, I guess this is the one I want here. Just shows it a little bit better. Same picture. Glacial markings on top of the sediments deposited by the global flood, by the way. In showing this pattern here, showing they were all once connected. South America, Africa, India, and Australia. And of course, remember on this map, what looks like to the east, that's actually north. What looks like to the west, that's actually north. What's north is the north. Everywhere is north. India went north, Africa went north, South America went north, Australia went north, and of course, Asia. My suspicion is that Asia was also connected here to Australia. And Australia separated from Asia as it was moving north. And Asia just kept on going. And of course, we know India went north along with Asia. I'm not even so sure that Asia was never connected here to begin with. You know, they say India crashed into Asia, but you know, there's a good possibility that Asia was all connected here too as well. So it's one big landmass at the South Pole, which would be kind of wobbly. Probably was kind of wobbly, and it broke apart after the sediments cemented. The sediments, of course, became cemented, and then they broke apart. Once they broke apart, the centrifugal force of the spinning Earth sent everything north. Everything went north. So it's not a big deal, but it does help explaining things to atheists and skeptics of how the animals got to Australia, how they got to South America, because you have the same animal in Africa as South America. The jaguar and the leopard are the same animal. The honey badger and the greater grison in South America is the same animal. Of course, crocodiles, you have American saltwater crocodiles, as well as, you know, Australian saltwater crocodiles and African freshwater and saltwater crocodiles, as far as I know. And even in India, they got crocodiles too. So it it helps to explain how, if all these continents were connected, it helps to explain how the animals got there from the Middle East. It's not so far. It's even not so far anymore. You know, because everything was connected until up to 100 years after the global flood. And of course, people, disobeyed the command of God to spread out, and they built the Tower of Babel instead until the breakup of the continents, and then everybody was all shook up and everything from a catastrophic event like that. So everybody isolated into their family groups and began speaking their own languages, and then eventually spread out 100 years after the global flood. So it's, like I said, it's not a real big deal, but it does explain a lot. And of course, it explains the the frozen animals in the Siberia, Canada, north in Alaska, and everywhere, which didn't make sense to a lot of scientists as to why all of a sudden all these lions and deer and mammoth and wolves and stuff are quick frozen. But now we know the rest of the story, right? Now this is an easy explanation as to a whole lot of things as to how the animals got to where they went. And of course, you have marsupial. They ask, why are marsupials in Australia? No, we have marsupials in South America too, and Asia. They're called possums. You know, they're marsupials. So we're basically worldwide in the possums. So you can argue points individually, but you can't throw out all the evidence, because this is what it eventually looked like here. So all this was connected to Antarctica, the South Pole. Of course, this is all south, north and south here, because the maps stretched out. But just the force of it going north is the action that made the separation, because it had to go north. It couldn't, because it was broken apart. Everything went north their own way. Like I said, I believe Asia was even connected to Australia as well, because I've seen you know a representation of how Australia separated from Asia, and it fits very well as well. So I don't think Asia was too far away to begin with. And of course, North America was connected to this part of Africa right here, northern coast of Africa, northern west coast of Africa. That's there's continental shelf here, but if you look at the continental shelf, it fits this shape of Africa right here. So that explains a whole lot. It's not some crazy idea. There's a lot of evidence. You have the glacial evidence, you have the sediment evidence, you get the fossil evidence, you got the live animal evidence of animals living both in Africa and Australia. And after it separated, they were separated for good. So, it's not an oddball idea. It's not a crazy idea that makes no sense. Okay, that last slide showing that the glacial movement could have been a mechanism of pushing the plates too. Well, it's clear that the plates were sliding, and the glacial movement could have had something to do with the breakup as well. Could have just became too oblong and too heavy, and it could have been part of the breakup as well. Yeah. Okay. Love the explanation of separation of leopards and jaguars. Another logical point. Yeah, a lot of people don't know, but there is a greater grison in South America that's almost an exact replica of the African honey badger. It's the same animal with a little different markings and stuff like that. The Torres Straits above Australia are only 30 feet deep. Yeah, I saw an animation of the separation of Australia and Asia, and it looked pretty convincing to me. So I believe that Asia wasn't far away, or was actually connected to Australia as well, and India for that matter. And Everything just broke apart and went north. And of course, once everything got moving, there was no stopping it until until they were shoved up into the Arctic, and they really then they couldn't go any farther because of the centrifugal motion was in the opposite direction. So that stopped them from going all the way to the North Pole. But it still froze all the animals in the area. So yeah, I guess it's not a whole lot to explain. Of course, the lifespan of humans, Aust- Australasia, yeah, Australia was once called Australasia. Um, the other thing is that the lifespan is actually, if you look at the lifespan of humans, it was cut in half by the global flood, and then it was cut in half second time by the breakup of the continents in the days of Peleg. It was cut in half twice. I mean, to lose 500 years of your life is one thing, and then to lose another 250 years off your lifespan is significant as well. And then it just kept going down from there. And afterwards, Abraham was born. But I'm pretty hyped or excited or about my most recent finding of the inversion of the out of Africa theory or belief claim. The claim, of course, being that, let's see, the claim being that the root of the tree, the claim is that the root of the tree is an A00. That's what the claim is. But there's a problem with that. Big problem is that Ham is the baby brother, baby boy. So you can't root the tree with Ham. You have to root it with Japheth. So that means that totally destroys the out of Africa evidence, their evidence, because it can go both ways. If you're going from Ham to Shem to Japheth, and it works out really good by gaining the mutation, separating everybody, one arrow going this way, then it also works from Japheth through Shem to Ham, going the opposite direction, losing an identifier. So since they didn't know where to root the tree, they got it all wrong. So this is the order of birth is Japheth was born first, Shem was born second, and Ham was born last. That means you have to root the tree in Japheth, then Shem, and then Ham. This is very important because it works out perfectly. All this evidence that I thought was a destroyer of the biblical narrative turns out to be a confirmation. We already know it's confirmed anyways because we know that I already identified all the descendants of Japheth and the descendants of Noah and everyone. But this claim of out of Africa is wrong. So if there's a stair step going this way, connecting everybody, gaining a mutation supposedly, then there's a stair step going the opposite direction from Japheth through Shem to Ham, which is the correct direction, by losing an identifier. So Japheth was losing an identifier. Of course, I always like to see this because a lot of people may or may not know about this, but this is Nimrod in Europe. And it's the reason why they say early Europeans were darker, because of the influence of the descendants of Nimrod. It's, everything fits together. Everything ties together so well. Even the mitochondrial DNA lineages, they all tie together, which here's the mitochondrial right here, because you have two Semitic mitochondrial lineages. You have the R lineage, which is the Middle East lineage, and European lineages, which 95% of Europeans have this Semitic mitochondrial DNA lineage. Well, probably including this too, because this is Semitic as well. So the N branch and the R branch are two Semitic lineages of mitochondrial DNA. Because what happened was Madai is over here in the Medes, and Madai also went to Europe, in this area in Europe. But Madai asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem. So everywhere Madai goes, he carries this second lineage, or this other lineage of mitochondrial DNA with him wherever he goes. So it's going to have a different letter designation, but it's the same lineage in the same area where Madai was in Europe, where he went to America, all the way to America. The A lineage is here. And the B lineage is not the same lineage. The B lineage is from the R branch. So the B lineage came from the Middle East. Now they probably went down here by boat and then into this area here. Of course, you have the F, the B, the P, and the B are all the Middle Eastern mitochondrial lineage, because there's this story in the Philippines of the land of gold, the land of Ophir, and all that stuff. But there's only the Semitic mitochondrial lineage. There's no paternal lineage of the Middle Eastern Semitic lineage, haplogroup. So the paternal haplogroups are missing from this area of Asia, but the surviving mitochondrial DNA went all the way to America. I believe probably by way of the Pacific Islands, because they don't seem to be represented up here in this area very much. And there is evidence, in fact, of different things coming from South America to the islands, and maybe vice versa as well. But the B lineage of mitochondrial DNA survived all the way to America. But when they went to go put letter names on the lineages in America, I guess they started with America for some reason, and they just named it A, B, C, and D. The C and D is the Japhetic lineage, which is the mitochondrial lineage that is lacking in the world, because probably Japheth didn't have as many daughters as he had sons. And that's the reason why Madai asked to marry one of the daughters of Shem, because apparently Shem had less sons, but he had more daughters than sons. So he had extra daughters that Madai asked to marry. And now you know the rest of the story. But this is the lineage. This is the A lineage in Europe. It's the W, the I, and the X. That's the letter designations that I have to remember. Is the I, W, and the X. And we know about the X being in the Middle East, as well as the X being over here in America, in this Great Lakes region. The X is the same place where the R1B is, and probably the T and the rest of the Phoenician signature is there in that area as well, which is kind of being held secret. And the only other one of this Madai Semitic mitochondrial DNA lineage is the S in Australia. So, of course, Madai went this direction. The Q is not so much in this area, the Q paternal haplogroup, but the maternal lineage is represented here in Australia as S. Okay, so anyway, everything fits. Everything fits very well. Of course, this is a R1B. R1B is Ripfath, R1A is Ashkenaz, and the I1 and I2 is the descendants of Arpachshad, which is linked to the descendants of Judah, J2. And G2 is Assyria. It's all the way into Europe as well. Okay, going back to this other one, if I could find it. What did I do? Pass it? Let's look at this. I don't know if this makes much sense here, but we'll go ahead and look at this. So the K is the K element, O, P, Q, R, S, and T, which is the descendants of Japheth. All these here are the descendants of Japheth. And of course, K is a category. It's also a lineage because you have all these lineages here of K, S, K, and M, which is all the same lineage. So it's not only is it a category of everybody, the way they have it, it's an individual specific lineage as well. And then they got the where's the O and the N and the O? There's N and O. The N and O is Meshach and Magog. The L and T are the Greeks, Javan and Tiraz. Of course, P is a category as well, but it's the descendants of Gomer. It's either maybe it's Togarma, I don't know, but Q and R are Madai and Gomer. Oh, and then you got more K's over here. So they were either gained or lost some information. But of course, this is all one family tree anyway. This is all one family, the sons of Japheth. So of course, they're going to share information. But who knows what this stuff is? This could be, you know, I think it's still Tubal. Anyways, if it's, identified as K. It's probably still Tubal anyway. But it's larger than what it seems. Sometimes K is hardly even mentioned. Anyways, going back to here, this is the identifier for Madai, which, but the identifier that the Semitic Arpachshad and his uncle Japheth has, the identifier is M523. So this identifier here connects Arpachshad with his uncle Japheth. So Arpachshad being the firstborn means that Shem had this identifier when Arpachshad was born. But then when Shem had Elam, when Elam was born, of course, Elam and Shem lost this identifier, but they still had this identifier, which identifies Assyria and Japheth and Shem and Arpachshad and everybody. So these are stair-step identifiers that people have, and then the later descendants, later in time, they lose these identifiers. And then here's F again. F is a larger lineage than what is sometimes illustrated as well. And of course, it's shared by Nimrod. So here's an identifier that everybody has, including Mitzrayim, including Put, including Nimrod, including Shem, including Japheth. Everyone has this identifier, but the one that doesn't have the identifier is Nimrod's father Cush later on, when Nimrod's other brothers are born. Of course, you cannot root the tree with the youngest son. It's just totally nonsensical, because he's the youngest son, how is he going to have identifiers that everybody else should have or is supposed to have? Because he's the youngest son. And I'm thinking that they inverted it, half knowing, or maybe not knowing, I don't know, that the order of birth is Japheth first, then Shem, then Ham. But now they don't have an excuse. Okay. Of course, the mystery of the Assyrians is this, because this is the area of Assyria up here, but then somehow Nimrod became the ruling class. Him and his sons became the ruling class of the Assyrians, so much so that the Bible connects Nimrod and Assyria. And of course, Assyria is Semitic, and Nimrod's descendants are Hamitic, because his father is Cush and he's the firstborn. But he was the great hunter in the Bible before the Lord. So that explains the dilemma with the Sumerians, which they don't seem to realize is a mixture of both Hamitic and Semitic people. That's why the ruling class looks Hamitic, and the people themselves look Semitic. But that's always been a big mystery and never explained to me when I was a kid, so it's one of those things. if I can find what I'm looking for. This is the older map anyway. This is not the good map. Or is it? Oh, it's in the correct order, I guess. Because we have, notice this is E, but there's three E's. There's E1, 2, 3. Mitzrayim is the E3. And the Put and Canaan have to be E1 and E2. And I just have to find out which is which, but the D is linked to probably E2. In other words, it's got the same identifier with E1, 2, 3. So D shares this identifier with E. And the odd one out, of course, would be, this might be a little bit, this is the older one. I think it's a little bit backwards. Because C is linked to the rest of the world, I guess, as well as D and E. But the other map is different. Because you have the A and the B and the C, which are Cushites. A, B, and C are Cushites. D is probably a Canaanite. Anyway, just keep on going until I can find it. Okay, here's one. There's different studies. Sometimes they show different things. Of course, Neanderthal is Japhethite. You don't have to worry about its high Neanderthal frequency. And Europe is high Neanderthal frequency. But of course, Asia is higher in Neanderthal frequency than Europe. So this is a little bit misleading here. So, but because it's mixed with Denisova too. Denisovan has high frequency in Papua New Guinea, as I've shown before. And of course, Denisova K is way up here, except that this is the area where the C and the D Hamitic haplogroups were. So that could explain why there's such a high frequency of Denisovan in this area. And of course, the paternal haplogroup of Papua New Guinea is K, which is divided into M and S. Because for whatever reason, they split up K and divided it into M and S, even though they're all related as under K, which would be Tubal, which was also in Italy as well. I'm going to have to go back somewhere. But the Jewish people would be vindicated here, J1 and J2, the Sephardic Jewish population by haplogroup. And the even though the Sephardic Jews are in Spain and Africa, there's not a whole lot of E in their population. Okay, here's the T. The T is explained because of the Phoenicians, the Greek Sea peoples. You look at Javan's descendants, they're all Mediterranean Greek Sea people. All his descendants are in the Mediterranean as this coastal sea people, which later became a significant population in the Phoenician population, which of course in turn became part of the Jewish population, but only 3% in the Sephardic Jews. Q is the Medes, I is the remaining Danites, because they took off in another direction as well. Here's the non-religious Jews, apparently more non-religious, and it's still 30% J. And Albert Einstein was an E, and still not a whole lot T. Q, G is Assyria. Then you have the R1A, R1B, which is Gomer, descendants of Gomer, which is European and Mediterranean. To Ripfath is Mediterranean, so he's R1B. So Mediterranean is also in the Jewish population as well. But here again, here's the Ashkenazi. Still 3% of T, which is the Javan Sea people. Of course, there's a larger percent of R1A because they're Ashkenazi. So, and R1A is the descendants of Ashkenaz in the land of Ashkenaz. So that's why the Ashkenazi Jews have a larger percentage of R1A, the descendants of Ashkenaz, the son of Gomer himself. But still, in a large Assyrian population as well. But still, you can see it's which part of this Assyrian population is Jewish anyway. But still, almost 50% of the Judea or the Arpachshad population, descendants of Arpachshad, the firstborn son of Shem. Okay, see what we got going on here. I'm looking for that. I'll just have to go to it. Never find it this way. Let's go straight to it before we lose all sense of what's going on. Okay, this is the diagram or family tree of the human population, human haplogroup, Y chromosome haplogroup. A, B, C, D, and E. Of course, C is over here. F is just a sliver right here. Not very well represented according to this, but there's F1, F2, and F3, I believe, and other divisions of F, which is, Anatolia and places like that. But anyways, you can see here how instead of gaining mutations, because the out of Africa belief is that you start off with A, and this is genetic evidence too, but they're thinking that these identifiers are gained. And of course, this identifier here is CT, which means everybody from Nimrod to Javan Sea people with the Japhethites, everybody from Nimrod to Japheth share this identifier right here. So this one here is CF, which means that apparently it's an identifier that was gained with that they had in common. Well, they're connecting CF, but I'm not so sure. CF would mean like everybody in F. So it could be an identifier that Shem and Ham had, which was later lost to it was later lost to Cush. Because if this is everybody in C to F, which is everybody Hamitic, then that would mean Noah acquired this identifier when Shem and Ham were born. Of course, it's shared by Mitzrayim, E1, E2, E3. Where's E3? E3 is not even here. I don't know why they had an aversion to show E3, but the most of the population is E3 in Africa. But anyways, we have to get some more updated information. But you can kind of see here how it works. Arpachshad, Shem, and Japheth shared this identifier when Arpachshad was born. When Elam was born, now they use this identifier, which everyone shares because they lost this identifier here. Or that is, Shem lost that identifier. And then when Asher is born, they use this identifier that everybody shared because Asher lost this identifier. And it goes on like that. Same thing with here. So if it works from Ham to Japheth, gaining an identifier, it will certainly work from Japheth through Shem to Ham, losing an identifier. Because if it works one, and probably if they figure it out, they'll be able to find more identifiers proving the Japheth is the oldest son, Shem is the second born, and Ham is the third born son. So Ham being the third born isn't the root of the tree of the human population. Because he's after the fact. Even though some of Cush's descendants have a lot of genetic distance, it doesn't equate to age. Because the rest of these are pretty much the same genetic distance. Because it's supposed to represent genetic distance. But the only genetic distance that's way out of kilter would be the descendants of Cush, pretty much. The A and the B. You know, if this is correct, apparently it's correct. I don't know. But the E's have a lot less genetic distance. D has a lot less genetic distance, same as C. And they could be put in like this for convenience sake, not necessarily in genetic distance, but of course to support their out of Africa theory. But this has bothered me for a long time because I understood that these identifiers link these individuals or these branches, you know, which I understand I and J to be Arpachshad, which is linked to Japheth. But then Arpachshad's brothers don't have this identifier here that links Arpachshad to Japheth, but that's because Shem and Japheth are brothers. Arpachshad had the identifier when he was born. Shem lost this identifier. So each one of these steps is losing an identifier. Elam has this identifier, but it's lost to Assyria. And it's lost to Since it's GHIJK, it's lost to F as well. I mean, there could be some tweaks here to be done still, but yeah, this is showing here that there's a difference between there's a separation between Aram and Lud and Cush. I mean Nimrod. This is the lineage of Nimrod, which everyone shares this identifier, but Nimrod does not share this identifier here, which separates the Semitic populations from the Hamitic populations. It's totally separate. And of course, this identifier that has everyone except A and B, the odd one out would be the descendants of Cush. The other descendants of Cush that aren't Nimrod, because Nimrod, of course, being the firstborn. So Nimrod can have this identifier. Everybody, including Nimrod, can have this one. This is CT. This is everybody, except for A and B, which is the brothers of Nimrod that no longer share this identifier, no longer had this identifier of his father, Cush. So Cush apparently lost that identifier when Cush's brothers were born. But then, of course, the Egyptians and the Canaanites and the first Phoenicians, the descendants of Put, they do share this identifier because it's C through T, so it's C, D, E. So all the rest of these, which is E1, E2, and E3, E3 being missing, the largest population being missing, but they still share this identifier here. And D shares this identifier with E, because D is a descendant of probably E2. Let's see which one is E2. Here's E2 over here. Yeah, so this E2 over here is probably where the D is connected to. But if there's comments anybody has to make, or any clarifications or anything, any updates that I find, I'll add them as well. But this is older information, and these charts are sometimes contradicting each other sometimes, so we have to make sure we have the right information, and we'll figure it out. But Japheth definitely has to be the oldest son, or has to be the root of the tree, because he's the oldest son. Shem is the second born, Ham is the third born, meaning that Ham is not the root of the tree, meaning that you're not gaining mutations, you're losing them going this way, because the timeline goes from the oldest to the youngest son. The timeline doesn't go from the youngest son to the oldest son. That's just way off. But that explains why these people share these identifiers, because Arpachshad, of course, is the firstborn son of son of Shem. That's why he shares an identifier with his uncle, Japheth. Same thing with Nimrod. Nimrod shares this identifier with the rest of the world because his father, Cush, later loses the identifier when the brothers of Cush are born. So that clears up, so much for us, and it shows that that the timeline is going from the oldest son to the younger son. The oldest son Japheth to the younger son Ham, not the other way around. They have it backwards. They have it exactly backwards. Well, I guess that's about it for right now. See if we got any more comments here. They were both hunters. Yeah, the Esau and Nimrod were rival hunters, apparently, I guess. I don't know. Honesty Angel, God bless. Iron Matt, God bless. Arctic Timberwolf, Kevin Colvin, or Keith Colvin, sorry. Yeah. When you know the Bible is true, you know everything has to fit, has to work out. And we're figuring out how it does work out. And it's because they got it backwards. They got to have the family tree inverted, or the human family tree. It's exactly the opposite. Thanks for putting it all together. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I didn't even begin to understand it when I started out, but I knew that Nimrod was C because it couldn't be anybody else. And then I kept working from there. J2 is Judaic. J2M172 is probably Davidic, the descendants of David and King Solomon. So it all fits together very well. Okay. Yep. Chill with cat. Okay. If I go, yeah, only if I went to the thing. All right, I guess that's about it. No need to prolong this stream, I guess. So, everybody take care. Have a nice weekend, rest of the weekend, and stay close to your Creator God, because He's our only hope. He's our only solution. He's the one who is able to keep us from falling. So God bless and take care.